Hey, what's up you guys? This is Rob from A Gay Guy Plays, and today on the three-way we're letting the cat out of the bag when we revisit one of the wildest Warframes, Valkyr. Okay, so as most of us know, Valkyr has been through several mechanical revamps, from armor boosts, changes to Hysteria, and the final cherry on top, her own combo set specific to her ultimate ability. And yet it's taken me this long to get this out to you guys. So one of the main reasons it's taken me so long is that there were some things that occurred during playtesting that didn't quite make sense, and the explanations that were available seemed more like connect the dots rather than cold hard facts. Now, I feel like I've done as much on my end as I possibly can when it comes to playtesting and researching, so I won't leave you waiting any longer, and I'll give you what I got. Now, first things first, for our newcomers, I'll start off with the basic build that uses all of her abilities and requires no additional polarities. We'll also have a quick chat about armor versus shields. Then we'll get into the real juicy stuff and take a look at my extended duration Hysteria build. We'll chat about some possible variations, and the last build we'll go over will actually be a weapon build that shows off all of the mods that can turn up the punch on Hysteria. Now, pardon the crazy mess of polarities. Me and Valkyr have had a long crazy history, but I promise you, this build will fit in the basic Valkyr polarity set. So for the basic build, we start off by adding in Steel Charge in her aura slot, which will give her a nice boost in damage. Then we toss in all of her abilities. Next, we slot in Intensify, which will increase the potency of all of her skills. Yes, vets, you heard me, all of her skills. We'll talk about that later. Next comes Continuity to extend the duration of Warcry and Hysteria, while Streamline allows you to use both because, let's face it, that combo is just pure sex. Next is Rage. Now, this one is a bit optional, but due to the fact that Valkyr has such low shields, you're gonna have to get used to taking some damage, so I figure why not take advantage of it and get yourself a little extra energy to fuel your next Hysteria. Last in are Vitality to boost her health and Steel Fiber to bump up her armor. Now, if you're a bit newer, you're probably asking me, why don't we buff up her shields instead of her armor since they're so low to start with? Well, if we take a look at her stats, Valkyr currently has the highest armor rating in game, which allows her to take insane health damage. Now, there is an intense equation for exactly how all of this works, but let's face it, you're not going to use it, so TLDR, using a max redirection will only give her a total of 370 shields, with an effective health of 2,220. However, adding in a Steel Fiber will greatly increase her mitigation, allowing her to take 80% less health damage and bringing her effective health to 3,848 with 150 shields. And let's face it, due to the fact that Hysteria will allow you to gain back any missing health, boosting her armor is definitely the way to go. Now, for those of you willing to invest a little into this powerhouse, my absolute favorite setup is her extended duration Hysteria build. This version is quite balanced and can be tweaked to suit your playstyle. The following build will require a total of 3 Forma. Ignore the stars and all of the additional time and Forma I've put into her. All you need is 3. Like I said, lots of history, lots of crazy playtesting. So for your polarities, all you'll need to add in is 3 Ds into any empty slots. Because let's face it, you know how much I like putting Ds into my empty slots. I know you were thinking it, I just said it out loud. So as you can see, we have several returning guests. In fact, the build is pretty much identical to the previous build, except we removed Ripline and Paralysis and added in a max Narrow-Minded and a rank 2 Fleeting Expertise. With this build, Hysteria will cost 41 energy and last for just under a minute, while Warcry will cost 30 energy and last for almost 30 seconds. Now, the addition of Narrow-Minded is pretty much a no-brainer, as this is an extended duration Hysteria build. I've seen a few people argue against it due to the fact that it hinders Warcry's range. Now, here's why I don't give a fuck. Number 1, in higher tier missions there are very few Warframes that are going to be capable of safely getting into melee range of an enemy. At that point, most players are using their ranged weapons or their Warframe abilities, so giving up duration to give them attack speed is pretty much a waste. But if they feel like it's absolutely necessary, you probably aren't playing too far from each other, so just pop over and they can experience the extended duration Warcry as well. Number 2, the usefulness of slow on enemies is debatable. If I'm fighting the infested, I don't want them slowed. I want them to get to me, and I want them to get to me fast, so that I can rip their ugly little faces off. And as for ranged enemies, well, I've almost got a full minute to stroll my ass over to them and tear their little face off too. So all in all, I feel like the 99% duration increase is worth the loss of range in Warcry. Now, as for the rank 2 Fleeting Expertise, it's mainly in there so that you don't have to take too much damage with Rage to get back into Hysteria. I also like having it in there because of the fact that we don't have Flow. This way we can still keep Warcry and Hysteria up for pretty cheap. Now, yours doesn't need to be rank 2, you can bump it up one more rank to get a total of 70% energy efficiency. But honestly, I just like it at rank 2 because it makes Hysteria a minute and it feels right. Now, there may be a few of you who are wondering, why the hell is Intensify still at this party? Well, we already know it increases the attack speed and armor boost of Warcry, but with the latest batch of Valkyr changes, Power Strength now increases the damage of Hysteria. Now, I know that there are some of you foaming at the mouth and jizzing in your shorts over putting a Blind Rage into this build. However, I personally felt that the amount of energy it ate up just wasn't worth the additional damage. I know, but honestly, this build kills just fine at higher levels, and I much prefer the balance. But you can do with your build as you wish. Now, if you were going to swap things out, I would probably start by pulling out Fleeting Expertise. You could toss in a Maxed Vigor for some additional health, or go whole hog with the duration and toss in a Constitution for 1 minute and 16 seconds of unadulterated face ripping. However, that's a lot of carnage and color correction for me to take in without a break. Now, the last build we're going to go over is actually a weapon build, and this is a good opportunity to go over the mods that actually affect Hysteria. But first, let's chat about its revamped mechanics. Now, as a bit of a preface, a lot of this information was gained through playtesting I found on Reddit, as well as my own playtesting to ensure that the information was accurate. So the numbers may not be 100% exact, but they will be pretty damn close. So as we touched on earlier, Warframe Power Strength mods now affect Hysteria's base damage. It's a little complicated, but basically Hysteria now takes into account your equipped weapon's base damage, multiplies it by approximately 1.75, converts it evenly into impact, slashing, and puncture, then adds it to Hysteria's 300 base damage, and for every point of Power Strength equipped on your Warframe, that total is increased. Now, when it comes to crits, things start getting really interesting. Hysteria has a crit chance of 25 and a crit modifier of approximately 200 or 300%. But in addition, it also adopts your equipped weapon's critical chance and critical multiplier. Interestingly enough, they do not seem to combine, but rather live independently of each other, meaning occasionally Hysteria will crit using Hysteria's critical chance and critical multiplier, and occasionally Hysteria will crit using your equipped melee weapon's crit chance and crit multiplier, and sometimes both will crit, combining both critical multipliers for one devastating attack. Now, as for attack speed, Hysteria has its own independent attack speed and does not base its rate off of your weapons. Okay, so that's the main chunk of mechanics over and dealt with. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weapon mods that will actually benefit Hysteria. So, Pressure Point and Spoiled Strike both boost the weapon's base damage, and due to the fact that Hysteria isn't affected by attack speed upgrades, it also does not seem to be affected by Spoiled Strike's attack speed downgrade. Now, in playtesting, I did notice that True Steel and Organ Shatter increased the critical damage that I dealt. However, due to the nature in which Hysteria criticals, I wasn't sure if it only affected the equipped melee weapons crit and crit chance multiplier, or if the benefits applied to Hysteria's own critical stats. But I can confirm that I did see an increase in damage when using them. Now, other than these mods, no other melee mods have an effect on Hysteria. No elementals, no physical damage mods, no bane mods, and as for status, I have no clue because really, status isn't important. The only arguable one would be Berserker, because its attack speed stacks will carry over into Hysteria if you had gained them before activating the ability. However, once in Hysteria, you will be unable to generate more stats. So with those mods equipped, you can feel free to build your weapon as you like. Now, as for what weapons you should use, there's always the dual Ichor, which has a nice hefty critical chance as well as an immense critical multiplier. Or you could try your hand at the Dragon Nikana with its extreme base damage and respectable crit chance. As for me, I like the Obex. It's got just as much critical chance as the dual Ichor, a respectable crit multiplier, and most importantly, above all things, it matches. And that brings this extremely long three-way to a close. I'm exhausted, my throat hurts, and yet I'm still quite satisfied, and I hope you are as well. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Three-Way. Be sure to check out my debunk on Hysteria versus the Dual Ichor, and if you feel like a little bit of a throwback, the original rundown I did on Valkyr, ages ago. I'm not even sure if the info is correct anymore. Boo. Now, don't forget to do the thing that I asked you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, stay tuned for more long, yet satisfying content here at A Gay Guy Plays. You know, I'm not really sure what it is, but sometimes ripping someone's face off just feels good.